Thank you for joining us here tonight for another edition of Q&A with Agri. Tonight we are talking about the T40 and about updates to the T40 as it enters into its second season. My name is Taylor Moreland. I am the host for tonight, the owner and founder of Agri Drones. With me is Nathan Sayre, one of our technicians, and of course, as always, Ryan Watson, one of our product knowledge specialists. All right. So kind of platform for this evening as we go through some of the T40 updates. We're going to first cover some hardware updates that have happened kind of over the course of the T40's lifespan since it was released about a year ago to now. And then we'll look at maybe some upcoming firmware updates, some third-party firmware, some third-party software that now works with the T40. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with some maintenance tips if you guys have T40s entering into your second season. What do those drones look like right now? How can you properly make sure that they're going to be functioning for this upcoming season? And then, along with that, some of the components that you might look at keeping spares on hand. All right. Nathan, sounds good?
Yep, sounds good with me.
Great. Cool. Well, Nathan put together a PowerPoint here, so to kind of go over some of the hardware updates. You guys have a visual representation if you're watching on the screen. If you guys have questions while we're going through anything, just pop that in the Q&A or pop that in the chat. All right, Nathan, you see that slideshow?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great. There we go. So Nathan, I know you've replaced hundreds of about every component on the T40, along with the
Yeah.
other techs in the tech room. So I'm going to kind of put this back on you as we go through some of these hardware updates. So can you just kind of explain, maybe for those who don't know, what the spray rod is on a T40 and what the changes have been made?
Yeah, so really what the spray rod is that rod that comes down off the back arms of, where the drone sprays from. And what you can kind of tell here from this arrow and from the pieces is what they changed was that adaptive shaft and the fixing nuts. Now, if you look at the image with the full spray rod, those pieces is that nut at the very top, which screws into the motor base. And then the adaptive shaft, you can't really see in that picture, but it is shoved into the nut and shoved down on that on the spray rod. So where that little bitty sliver is, that's all you can see of the adaptive shaft. So on the old style, it was made out of plastic. And what we've seen a lot very early with the T40, and a lot of people had this issue, was that spray rod was getting loose. The threads were wearing out. As more people were tightening back up, the threading was getting even worse. And we even had some people where the spray rod would just fall out mid-flight. Like that image right there is what it looked like when it would return home. So what they did, what DJI did, was they got the new fixing nut, made the threading aluminum, and we've seen big improvements on it. Obviously not threading out, but also just staying up in that motor base. And that adaptive shaft, as I mentioned, it gets pushed into that fixing nut. You just push them together when you put it together. And it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but the old style had this really long plastic piece that would slide up into the motor base. And what they did on the new one is they made it shorter, which allows it to slide up in there easier and better and not wear off as easily.
So if somebody has the plastic style, first off, would you recommend that they at least get a new style on hand or replace it? And how easy is it to replace from the old to the new?
Yeah, it's super easy to replace. Both pieces are fairly cheap. I would recommend it just because, like I said, that old style, it would fall out or just wobble really bad. So with the wobble, we'd seen it wobble and of course, shake out some of the product as people were flying back and forth, which is never good. But when it comes to replacing, again, fairly easy. That fixing nut just unscrews from the bottom of the base, like what you see in that image. And then down on the spray rod, there is three screws that you can unscrew where you will see the signal cable going into the motor. So once you get those three screws out, you can pop out that cable, unscrew the hose, and that whole spray rod will come apart. And you just unscrew that spray rod from the adaptive shaft. It'd take someone 5 minutes or so to replace one, or less than that to replace both of them.
Yeah, and it is real simple.
Yeah.
Prop gaskets is also an update that's happened since the T40s came out. So on these prop gaskets, this is, as you can see there, you got your prop and you've got the gaskets go uh, on the bottom and on the top between your motor and your bracket. So what was, I guess, Nathan, what was the issue with the old prop gaskets?
So the old prop gaskets kind of had two issues. First, even when you put brand new ones in, there's still a little bit of wobble in the props, a little bit of play in them. But also, those old style ones would wear out very easily. It was extremely common anytime we had a drone come in, if they had the old style, you could just sit there and wobble the prop because those old gaskets would just get worn out so quick. The new style ones are much better. You see, as soon as you replace them, you'll see how much more firm the props in there. There's really no play at all. And we're also not seeing them wear out quite like the old ones. The old ones, of course, there is the black plastic, or the black rubber, the two plastic, and then a prop, and then two more of the white plastic and another black rubber piece. So on one motor, you'd have 8 white pieces and 4 black rubbers. So that was kind of a lot to keep track of. If you ordered a whole set, you'd get just a lot more things to lose. As you can see down in the image with the new style ones, it's just one on the bottom, one on the top. So you'll just get 4 per motor. Much easier to keep track of, holds the prop in much better, not wearing out. That's another one that I would recommend getting new ones on.
And pretty easy to replace on those two.
Yeah. Yep. You take your 2 screws out from the prop adapters, and that comes up, and you can pull your props out, put 2 new ones on. Again,
Yeah.
pretty easy.
So if somebody has a wobbly prop, then that's the time to replace.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it's extremely common. I'd say 80% of the drones that would come in would have really loose props. And that's something to keep in mind. And even when you're flying, if you don't notice it, you got to think these drones are following aerodynamics. If the prop's wobbling, um, it's changing pitch of the props. So just from knowledge of that, you'd think that it could lead to more crashes, more instability of the drone itself.
Not just that losing efficiency, power efficiency, thrust efficiency.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, and this is a big one here, Nathan. I know there's some guys that kind of experienced some of these issues with the old style motor mount, but I guess can you just kind of explain what the old style motor mount is and the issues that we're having?
Yeah. So the old arm and the old motor mount, you can kind of see in this picture. That old arm, that's one from a wreck, which is why they got the made new style arms and mounts. Those that mount there is one piece and it would just slide onto the arm like that. Well, it's kind of hard to see in the image, but you see there's the 2 screws that kind of clamp it together, and then you put 2 screws into the side of the arm. And what we're seeing a lot is those two screws that go into the side of the arm, especially if a drone wrecks, it would either wear out the threading of the screws that go into the arm, or just rip those holes out and rip out the um, motor mount and the screws. So in this image here of the old arm, you can actually see where the drone wrecked, and that silver in there is where the screws broke off. So the mount would break, the motors would turn sideways or flip around and cause a lot more extreme wrecks. So luckily DJI has upgraded this, which is in the next slide. We'll show you what the new pieces look like. And here's the new pieces. Down in the bottom right, you can see that's the arm, and those other two is the new mounts. So the mounts just clamp on to that arm sleeve. And we've noticed a lot less wrecks caused from like motors flipping, and a lot less wear and tear on the arms too.
So this one's kind of a big one. I mean, your prop gaskets and your spray lances and whatnot, and that's pretty easy. But this one here, it's if you want to, if you have this style, on your drone, that's a mount and and an arm. So if you wanted to change styles, you'd have to get an entire arm and two new mounts. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. If you're completely looking to change styles, you would have to replace the arm and the mount.
Yeah. So I guess, kind of the decision here was, you know, is this mount okay to continue with? And if so, what are things guys should be checking?
Is it okay to continue with? Yes, there's still plenty of people who are out there flying with the old style. Like I said, we seen it rip out and flip the arms, but it wasn't extremely common where it was a very pressing issue that we felt like had to be changed. We didn't see it causing a ton of wrecks where people would say their arms were just breaking and stripping out like that. It was more of it would wreck and we'd see it from the wreck. So they'd have to replace the arms anyway. And then, like we said, when it comes to replacing, you would have to, if you're looking to replace, you would have to take off the whole arm and get a new mount, as well as get the correct brackets, which we can talk about in a minute. But one of the things I'd look into is if you're wanting to see if you feel like you need to change, is you can pop off that motor cover, the cover that goes around the motors. And I would check and see if there's any wobble in the motor. So, get your hands on the top, get your hands on the bottom, shake a little bit, see if there's any give. If there is a give, somewhere is getting worn out. Because not only would the threading inside the arm get worn out, but if you can look at that old motor, you can also see in that gray where the motor mount would kind of slide into those little slits. We would also see those areas start to wear out too. So that would be your checkpoints for if you're thinking you should upgrade.
And then I guess the next question then is availability, so let's say somebody does, they have a T40 with the old style arms, old style motor mounts. Something happens, it wrecks, you break an arm. Are these arms still available? These motor mounts still available?
So the old motor mounts, we still have unlimited supplies. The old arms, we do not. DJI only sells the new style of both. Usually we just replace. Obviously, if we have to replace an arm, we're putting the new mounts on. If someone would order the old style, we could give it to them until we run out of that supplies.
So if you break an arm, basically, you're going to be upgraded to the new style, no matter what.
Yeah, that's correct. And that won't affect, we have not heard of it affecting your aircraft if you would have one arm that's new style, three arms old style, any combination. We haven't heard of that affecting the aircraft, how it flies at all.
Sure. Fair enough.
And real quick, Taylor, backtracking
Yeah.
a little bit with those mounts. Another important thing, this isn't really an upgrade. This is more of some confusion we see a lot of people. have, as we know, all the motors can be swapped. One motor can go anywhere on the drone. But one thing you do want to look at is how the motor tabs face. As you can see on the motor mounts below you, there's two different style ones. There is what we call different direction, which I believe is M4. If you look on our store, it'd say like M4 different direction. And the other style is M5, same direction. So all the motors can be swapped, but it does depend on which of those mounts you have. So if you ever have a question of it, you can just look at the bottom of your motor or look at the bracket that is on the motor mount. And that's not something that's changed throughout the drone. If your M4 motor has the same direction, the M5 direction, your whole drone will have M5.
Have you guys seen any difference in, is one better than the other? Is there any data on that?
We have not seen any difference. We haven't heard of anyone having any difference. Really, if we break it down as to why DJI has done that, is they just have two different companies making those pieces in China. So for patent wise, they have to change the patent up a little bit. So there is no one's better than the other. It's just how they're made. Who makes them, I should say.
Yeah. One more pain in the butt to deal with, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, one more SKU to carry on the shelf.
One more SKU and some confusing conversations with people when they call in wanting motors.
Yeah. You bet. Okay. Battery. So this changed a little while back where the T40 battery basically got replaced by the T50 battery. It's not called the T50 battery. What's the part name on that?
The part name, I don't remember exactly what it is. If you look at the box,
1560. Yeah,
I believe that's right. I don't
yeah,
remember
Yeah,
off the
DB
top of my head.
1560.
it's the 1560.
You betcha.
Yeah.
So yeah, DB 1560. It's not called T50 battery. It's called DB 1560 battery, and it looks almost identical to the T40 battery. All the T40s that are coming out that we're sending out now, and all the battery replacements. If you replace a T40 battery, it'll be replaced with a T50 or a DB 1560 battery. Um, Not a huge difference here. The battery is the same milliamp, so it's still 30,000 milliamps, but it's higher voltage. It's one more cell essentially. So uh, 3 volts more. And you're going to see a slight increase in flight time. Nothing drastic, but a slight increase in flight time. The other thing, here is what we've noticed is, whenever your battery percentage drops below 40%, your voltage also drops. The lower percentage you have essentially means lower voltage you have. So below 40% battery, you have fewer volts, and so you need the same amount of power. Volts times amps equals watts. Your motors need power, they need watts. So if your voltage drops, that means you're drawing more amperage, right? It means you're going to draw down your battery faster whenever it's below 40%. Same payload anyways. So the higher starting voltage, that means you have a higher voltage at 40%, which means it shouldn't draw down as fast as the T40 battery will, and it will also have more sustainable power with higher payloads at lower voltage. So it's not necessarily an update anybody can change because it's just this is the new one. This is it. Um, the question we get from people is if I've got T40 batteries, should I replace them with T50 batteries? And in my opinion, no. Your batteries are functioning, just run with them because that's a big cost to upgrade to the T50 or T1560 battery.
They're the same
Anything else you
price in
guys want
the
to add
end
to
as
that?
well.
What's up?
They're the same price as well.
Yeah, same price. Yeah, do that. And these are the same, so there's that battery promotion still going on right now with the T40. And these are the batteries you get. It's not like they're liquidating. We're not liquidating old T40 batteries. It's the battery promotion. It's DV1560 T40 batteries.
One of the things that somebody just asked in the questions goes along with this real well. When do you think people will start to see that rebate come back in?
Yeah, good question. The rebate ended originally middle of January, so they said February is when those rebates would start rolling in. We submitted our information that they've asked for. So we're now waiting on EGI. So they said originally in February, but now that they've extended it to March 15th on the battery rebate, um, we don't know if they're going to just push back the entire rebate to make just one rebate, or if they're going to split it. And right now, this is a decision from the top at DJI, and everybody is gearing up for the Chinese New Year, and right now, so not super responsive. So I don't think we'll see the rebate. At the earliest, it would be end of February for that first round, and then it'll be the end of March for that second round. Because I guess, anyways, we'll keep you guys updated on that though. All right. So yeah, that's kind of the quick and dirty on what we have seen. There we go. What we've seen on hardware updates with the T40. So if you guys have questions on that hardware, just reach out to our tech support team, email us support@agrispraydrones.com, or text us, and you'll get one of the guys. They can help you figure out what you need to do if you have questions on updating hardware or not. A few things that I wanted to, we don't have slides on these, but kind of talk about too are, okay, we're going into the second season with the same drone, with the same T40 essentially. Other than a few hardware updates, it is the same drone, right? Um, so one question people ask me is, how do I feel about that, right? And originally I was like kind of bummed because like, well, we've always had a new, model. Every year there's a new model, right? So originally I was kind of bummed that we weren't going to have, the next version out in October. But after we went through this past spray season, we serviced hundreds of T40s this past spray season, from our customers, from people who weren't our customers, from you know all across the board. July was and August were very busy months for us. But I'll put this back on you, Nathan. I mean, you were in the tech room, on the phone and repairing drones. Your thoughts as far as reliability on the T40 versus the guys running T30s, and kind of the comparison there.
Yeah, I can tell you a comparison between the two is the T40 is much more reliable. Not only much more reliable, but a lot easier to diagnose and troubleshoot and help people over the phone. The T30, there was a lot more, well, it could be this part or it could be both of these parts together. The T40 is a lot easier to where we can really break it down, where if we'd spend a few minutes on the phone or however much time on the phone, we could probably get you the right parts sent to you when it comes to that. I know all the techs I can say are also extremely excited for the 40 to be around another year because of our knowledge hub, the documents we've made. I know from our standpoint, we will be able to shoot people documents that'll tell them ways to troubleshoot, to diagnose things they can do themselves where they don't even have to talk to us and they could probably look at it, order the parts, and be up and going the next day if they need to order more parts.
But you want to talk about that, kind of what you guys have done with the knowledge, like how this knowledge hub on the T40 was created, and like when it's going to be, kind of made publicly available.
Yeah. So as some of you probably know, is we already have a knowledge hub. We have a Google Drive where we have went in and made documents of errors that we've seen of things we can see. Well, Agri Spray kind of came to the conclusion that we could make it better, much better, a little bit easier to run through and look things up. So we have created a new knowledge hub, more of like an online hub. When it's getting released, I'm not entirely for sure. You actually may know more about it. I know a couple of the other techs, Zach and Elijah, spent a lot of time organizing it, and it looks really, really good. But pretty much how we made those documents is any errors that we've seen and any ways to diagnose it and what fix those issues. We pretty much had a template we'd follow where here's the issue or here's the error code. How can you troubleshoot this issue, this error code? What have we seen fixes it? And then somewhat of a conclusion of, okay, we suggest you try to this piece first, or we suggest you try switching these things to see if you can diagnose it a little bit easier. And it's not only things that we've gathered, it's things that we've gotten from talking to our customers. Because we see a lot of issues, but a lot of this also falls on you guys telling us what you've seen, telling us ways you've fixing or seen that have fixed issues. So it's something that we're super excited for. I think it'll look pretty clean, pretty slick. And I think it's really going to help our customers.
This will be available through our website, guys. It's it'll be publicly available actually. It's one thing we've noticed. There's the adoption rate on these drones is skyrocketing, and there's so many T40s out there going into the second season. Having a knowledge bank like this, how many resources have you guys created over the past 6 months, 8 months?
The past few months, we were up in the 80s of documents of knowledge, things we created of the T40, of the T30, of chargers, batteries, some of its specs, of just anything we could think of that someone could easily look up and find a resource to.
Yeah,
There's
Makaya
roughly 200 in
just
there right now.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, Makaya just texted, and 200 is that's including other drones too, of course. But
Yeah.
so yeah, but majority of those are going to be T40s, which is awesome. I mean, going into second season with a drone that we know so much about that is reliable. I mean, yeah, I'm stoked about T40 for a second season. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's already been a difference where we've had people call us and be like, "Hey, I've tried this, this, and this. This is what's happened. Do you think this is the part we need, or do you think this is the solution?" We'll be like, "Yeah, that's right." And what could have been a 5 to 6 minute phone call got shortened down to a minute.
Yeah, or with the knowledge hub, not even a phone call, frankly. I mean, you already know what you
Exactly.
need. Text us and confirm it. We're good to go. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, cool. One thing that, if you guys on here, T40 operators, if you operated in hilly conditions, I mean, going back into the second season with a drone that's been the most reliable we've ever seen is great, but you may have seen that the terrain following is kind of the Achilles heel on the T40. So there, we we always, of course, every time we see an issue with a drone, we let DJI know, so that they can start working on a solution. Terrain following was one of those we let them know early on, and now they're finally, um, probably because going into a second season, finally taking notice on the T40. There's some things we can't necessarily share right now, but we do know that there is an upcoming firmware update for the T40. It will have a few other things besides improved terrain following, but it will have improved terrain following. Um, Basically, it'll be utilizing the front radar in addition to that downward radar to read terrain in front of it much better and follow terrain in front of it much better. So that was kind of one of the things I wasn't looking forward to on the T40, but that'll be solved largely with this new update. No hardware changes, just a firmware change that should have been changed a long time ago, frankly. So, one other thing on firmware side, it's not necessarily an update on DJI's system. The DJI did some updates, but it's more so a third party. So since there are so many of these drones out there, T40s, T20Ps, DJI made an update on how they can take prescriptions, and then Pix4D and Agrimo, they're the first two anyways, that have created export ability for prescriptions for the T40. So if you've got drone imagery data, NDVI analysis, or any other data you can get into Pix4D or Agrimo, you can create a prescription for the T40 that will directly, export out of Pix4D, import into the T40 remote. It's incredibly simple to use. It used to be a very, very cumbersome process. But again, when you have a platform like this that is, that so many people are adopting, we're going to see a lot more partnership with third-party companies like Pix4D, which is why we partner with them. Why we're now selling Pix4D, because it finally makes sense. Finally have a software that we're excited about, that we can actually do spot spraying and actually make actionable decisions off of. So we're going to see a lot more of that type of thing, third-party software integration with the DJI system. Yeah. All right. So before we open up to questions, I guess, anything else on maintenance tips, common component issues outside of what we've already talked about that you might want to fill guys in if they're going into the second season with the T40?
Just kind of the same maintenance tips. I feel like we've gone over quite a bit. I'd still highly recommend people to clean their tanks a little more, at least run water through the lines, through the pumps. That is the pumps we've seen go out on a lot of drones, but it seems like the majority of times pumps go out, it's because it's people who aren't cleaning them out. And a lot of times it's the same answer we get from people is, well, I use it every day. Well, it doesn't take long for chemical to start solidifying in those pumps and start just making them work harder as soon as they start up. So that's a big one, is just running some water through there, cleaning it out a little bit, cleaning those lines out a little bit. Another common thing we see with drones that come in is the arms will be a little loose. It's not something we've seen cause a lot of crashes, but something we always tell people to be wary of. And that is very easy to tighten up. What you can do is just unfold the arm and grab it and check at the base and see if there's any wiggle, see if there's any play. And you just got to take a socket to that nut that's on top of that arm bracket, and you can just tighten it. It's a self tightener, so you don't even have to have anything on the bottom end. Super quick to do. Again, just going back to the aerodynamics, efficiency, changing pitch, just something I think people need to pay a little more attention of, that I think can help in the long run.
Yeah. I guess while you brought that up, one more thing on the arm brackets, that the cam lock. Now, while you're tightening up the bracket, check your cam locks also. T40s don't seem to get loose very often. The cam locks, that where you cam it over, but they can get loose. There's a turnbuckle you can turn there. Really simple, also.
Yeah, same thing. You can just leave it unlocked or extend it all the way, but don't lock it, and you can sit there and just get. I mean, you can get a pair of pliers and twist it and tighten it up, and you're good to go.
Yeah, you bet. Cool. Anything else on maintenance tips?
No, not really. Those are kind of the ones we see the most.
Yeah. Yes, if
I
you
got
guys have
one,
questions
actually.
on, what's that, Ryan?
I said I got one actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of just goes for flight in general. Do your pre-flight checks. Your pre-flight checks, if you don't do them, it'll turn into a situation where you get to call tech support real quick. It can be something as simple as you checking your arms wobbling before flight, and like Nathan said, just tighten them. It can be checking your cam locks if one's loose. It might pop open if it's too loose, but if it's tight enough, then you're good. Make sure they're closed too. We've seen people that don't close them on accident, and like if there's two people helping you open it, the other person forgets to lock them or something. Well, still double check it just to make sure. The simple stuff like that will keep you in there longer.
You know, that was that was the number one when we first started selling drones. Side story here. That with the Agris, the old Agris T20, the OG T20, still maybe my favorite spray drone. But anyways, pain in the butt to work on, but it was a cool drone. So the old Agris T20, it was very simple. You didn't have cam locks. You actually you kind of screwed the arms in. They hit like a nut that slid over the arm, and screwed to the base. So it took a bit longer to set up. You know, you couldn't just lock it in. And there's also no sensors on to sense if the nut was screwed in. Whereas the T40, you've got sensors on those cam locks. Yeah, you can bypass those sensors, but you know, if they're not locked in, it'll tell you. The number one repair job that we had or crash incident that we had with new users of the Agri C20 was not just not tightening the nut, but not putting the nut on at all. You know, get in a hurry, hold the drone out, and then take off. And then all of a sudden, all your arms just collapse in after
Yep.
it gets 10 feet up in the air and it just falls flat on the ground. So take your time. All right.
Did think of
Uh,
I did think of another thing real quick, Taylor. Something super simple you can also check before you start is just check the terminals on your power distribution board and on the battery. Make sure keep them clean, make sure nothing's in there. You know, if there's a chunk of mud sitting on your power board and you drop that battery into it, well, there's a chance that you just shoved a bunch of mud up into your battery and ruined a connection. So that's another thing to look out for.
there we go. Due diligence. I like it. All right, we're gonna get to some questions here. Looks like Jordan might have his hand up. Jordan, I'm gonna hit the button and allow you to talk. I can manage that here.
He's been wanting to talk pretty much the entire time. He had it up since the beginning. Hope he
Yeah, for
remembers what
some
he was
reason
talking about.
oh, there we go. Okay, Jordan, you're able to unmute yourself down at the bottom. You can find the button. All right, Jordan, if you're still on with us, I'll let you kind of uh, find how to unmute yourself. If you get there, looks like your hand's down. Okay, no worries. All right, we're gonna go on the Q&A here first. So Jason asks, what is the average hours they need to be replaced? We're talking about prop gaskets, I assume,
Yeah, it was
or
prop gaskets at the time.
prop gaskets. I I don't know if there's necessarily a number of hours, but it's not very many. I can tell you that on the old prop gaskets, you can wiggle your props up and down from the base. Just watch the base wiggle. Replace them. They're cheap. We'll send you a whole new set. Uh, Aaron asks, do the new prop gaskets work on the T30? Um,
I I don't I don't think we've tried. That's something would be very simple to try. I don't remember if we have or not. I know that the T30 and T40 did have different black rubber pieces. The 30s were thicker. So if they're thicker, that prop may not sit on there very well. I know we do just sell people what would be the old style for the 40. It's for the 30, we do sell people the black rubber and the two whites.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I think they're too thick, the T30 or any other drone. Yeah, the
Yeah.
T20P, of course, but that's the same motor. All right. Terry asks, are you seeing many where the tubing at the arm pivot wear or break? That's a good question, Terry. Personally, I have not seen the tubing at the arm wear and break. Have you guys seen that, Nathan?
We're talking about the hose running through the arm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we haven't really heard of that much. Usually the only time that we have seen that is when it wrecks and something just kinks the hose, or maybe someone slams something to the side of the drone that kinks the hose, but I haven't really heard of one wearing out.
The
Yeah.
tube kinking that I have heard of isn't in there. It's actually on the motor side. So people that mess with their spray lances a lot, whenever you are screwing that on or off, that hose is still attached to that motor at the bottom. So if you don't disconnect it, you're going to spin that plastic tube up in there, and that will act as a clog. But also, if it doesn't completely clog, if it doesn't twist completely, sometimes little tiny hairline holes or fractures happen in that, and you start getting air in your system, and then you're trying to troubleshoot why there's air in your system, but it's coming from what looks like your motor area. Well, that's probably an area you got to check.
Is in there. There's basically three connections um, with um, your U-shaped, black um, piece there in the arm. So yeah, but yeah, I haven't seen that either. And we have seen like if you're rebuilding an arm, the sensor, cam lock sensor, we've seen that get pinched. So just
Yeah.
be careful if you guys are rebuilding an arm. Sure, when you pinch that cam lock sensor or the wire for it. Quick update on the question about the T30 and T40 prop gaskets. Zach says that he's talked with customers and some are running updated prop gaskets on the T30s. We've not tested that, but they're running it with zero issues. So there you go. So you can run them. Okay. So Jason was asking about replacement hours for the prop blades. Is there, does DJI have a recommendation, Nathan, on hours for blades?
I do believe DJI has a recommendation. I would have to go back and look to be exact on it, so I'm not gonna ballpark it. A lot of it comes down to is again how it feels like, does it wobble? Because sometimes you'll notice a wobble in them and it's not the gaskets. You can pop that blade off and see that where the prop sits down on the motor that it is worn out. But also a lot of times it comes back to if there's chips or cuts or anything like that. That's when you're starting to risk more of having like a blade failure.
We have guys that are on their original blades from the old T20 or T30, um, for 2 years now, going in their third season. Um, so as long as your blades aren't worn, like Nathan said, or aren't wiggly, don't have any fractures, then I wouldn't see any problem running them for the second season.
Yeah, I'd say it's more of just making sure you do a thorough inspection of them, make sure they're all good, but there wouldn't be a need for you to buy a whole set of replacements if they're all
And
in good
clean
shape.
clean the chemical off the bottom of your blades. It cakes up.
I believe DJI says 300 hours
Yeah,
on their kind of general maintenance, but like they were saying, that doesn't mean that you got to do it. It's all about, like they were saying, just check your blades, make sure they're not broken, make sure there's nothing obvious to them. You're not missing too many chips. They do bend over time if you do too heavy loads of just say constant, let's just say hovering. No one really does that, but we've seen bent blades over time, but that takes quite some time for that to actually happen.
And that's 300 flight hours. I mean,
Yeah.
you you might average 6 hours flight hours a day if you're pushing it hard in the air. That's a lot, I feel like. That's 50 days of operation. So yeah, most people would be fine for a second season.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Aaron says, if you bought a T40 in November 2023, will it have the new motor mounts and spray arms? November 23. Possibly. Depends. There's kind of a mix of old and new. Um, so can't tell you for sure. what it'll have. Um, just you'll you'll notice. Just look and see if it looks like the pictures in the video here, and you'll know.
You can take your foam cover off, and if Nathan or Aaron, if you already have your drone, take your foam cover off. You can actually just look right at the motor mount itself right there, and you'll know.
Okay, Jason Lewis asks, any new rotary spray discs with tighter fit? So I'm guessing you're talking about the gasket that blocks off the flow. No, there's no new rotary disc of a tighter fit. You can get a new gasket to block off that flow. And then what we do have some guys doing is actually doubling up on the spring inside the check valve. So if you follow your hoses out of your tank where they meet the frame at, there's kind of an elbow, black elbow, and inside that elbow you have a check valve, and so you can actually double up or even triple up on that spring inside of there, and that doesn't hamper your flow. Doesn't seem like it anyways. We haven't noticed it hampering your flow, but it does actually decrease that dripping that you get at the nozzle. Yep.
There's nothing on the chat side of things.
Cool.
Yet.
That was simple. That was easy, guys. Oh, here we go. Terry says, we noticed in corn that our T40 would get into obstacle avoidance when it would lower to start spraying first pass with the new firmware update. Will the new firmware update help this in the same way it is expected for hilly terrain? Possibly, Terry. So there was two issues with the terrain following or radar, basically height, with the T40. A terrain following, first off, I mean, not not increasing altitude or decreasing altitude as fast as the terrain is changing. B, and what might be the thing here, is it was using that downward facing radar, which DJI hadn't actually ever used that type of radar for any of their drones. And so the firmware they put in there, they didn't have much experience with it apparently. And that radar would sometimes see through a tall crop like corn and would see the ground and pick up the height from the ground. So you set it for 10 feet. Well, it might sense closer to the ground and would, get too close to the corn. So that could be an issue that you were having, or it could be the binocular vision cameras as well. Binocular vision seems to be kind of a sticking point where you have to recalibrate or wipe and clean. So will the new update help? It's a good possibility that it will, but it's situational based, of course. And it also depends, I guess, what height you're operating at too. Okay, Terry says we think that it was what was happening is the prop wash was blowing the corn open and creating a hole. Bingo, there you go, Terry. Yep. So the new firmware update is something that DJI tested a lot with us. Was how flying it over. They actually flew over a lot of defoliated corn, and testing how the actual radar senses through the canopy with their engineer, their solutions engineer was testing that out, and so that's what they were trying to mitigate. Was you have a tall crop, and you've got kind of sparse coverage, making it pick up whatever it senses on the very top, but not what it senses on the bottom. So, fingers crossed, that'll solve the problem for you. And I don't have a timeline on that update yet. It will likely not be until late February at this point in time. You're welcome, Terry. All right, guys. So if you don't have any more questions, that's all we had for you. Just kind of some quick updates for you guys who are operating T40s now. Don't know what's new, and want to know, if you guys don't have a T40, then of course what to expect. One last question here, not to leave anybody out. Lauren says, "What is the best speed and swath for spraying fungicide in corn?" I take the agronomist approach here, Lauren. I say it depends, right? There's not a one solid answer. We just talked with a lot of folks on the regulation side with EPA and everything about, how swath width works, height, speed, downforce, vortex. What does all that mean, right? Droplet size, DRA. So all of this is subjective. There's no best speed. Do you want to get the most efficiency and more acres per hour, or do you want to get the best penetration? Or do you want to get a mix of both, right? Because the faster you fly, 10 feet, 12 feet, 13 feet or so, fly fast with the T40 at 32 feet per second, at 12 feet high or 10 feet high, you're going to create a swath in ideal conditions of up to 34 feet with a DRA at 8% variation, which is really low, which means that you can get a good coverage at 34 feet flying the T40 at full speed. Now, does that mean you're getting the best penetration? It, of course, does not mean you're getting the best penetration. So if you've got a bad infestation tar spot, well, maybe you ought to slow down. Maybe you ought to put on 3 gallons per acre. Maybe you ought to reduce your route spacing to 25 feet and really drive that product through the canopy to get really good penetration. Hope that helps. We do have, if you guys are curious on our knowledge hub, currently we do have swath width testing data for the T40, so you can see different heights and speeds and everything. We'll be bringing more data on or want to test penetration as well. So that'll be coming this year too. Okay, guys, thank you again for joining us for another edition of AgriSpray Q&A. This will be recorded. This will be on YouTube and podcast coming soon. So please share this with your friends and let us know if you have any questions. See you guys next time.